Admiral Varidian was having what she'd later describe as the most mathematically offensive day of her career when the impossible readings first appeared on her flagship sensors. She'd been reviewing tactical projections over her morning stimulant, a bitter Altarian brew that could dissolve hull plating, when her sensor officer's voice cracked across the bridge like a whip. "Admiral, we're detecting a massive energy signature approaching the outer rim, bearing 27 Mark IV. Varidian barely glanced up from her holographic displays. In 3 centuries of Imperial expansion, she'd seen every trick the galaxy's lesser species could muster. Classification? That's the problem, ma'am. The readings are contradictory. Now she looked up. Sensor Officer Kill's tentacles were twitching, never a good sign from an X-ray. Their species had evolved to process 17 different spectrums of electromagnetic radiation simultaneously. If Kill was confused, something was genuinely wrong. Defined contradictory. The signature reads as both a Class 7 dreadnought and a maintenance shuttle. Simultaneously, the mass readings fluctuate between 40,000 tons and, well, negative mass, which should be impossible. Commander Thex, her second-in-command, approached with the careful gait of someone trying not to appear concerned. Perhaps sensor malfunction? The array has been due for recalibration since. I ran diagnostics twice. Kill interrupted, a breach of protocol that made Varidian's eyebrows climb toward her hairline. The sensors are functioning perfectly. Whatever that thing is, it's genuinely reading as multiple contradictory states. Varidian stood, her command cape settling around her shoulders with the kind of dramatic flair that had intimidated 1,000 species into submission. The Galactic Empire hadn't conquered 3/4 of known space by accepting impossible readings. "Show me." The main view screen shimmered to life, displaying a tactical representation of the approaching vessel. Or vessels, or whatever the hell it was. The computer kept switching between different ship classifications every few seconds, as if it couldn't make up its digital mind. Has it responded to standard identification protocols? That's another problem, Thex said, consulting his datapad. It's simultaneously broadcasting Imperial frequency codes, civilian transponder signals, and what appears to be an ancient human distress beacon. All at the same time. Human. Varidian felt her lips curl into something that wasn't quite a smile. The newest species to stumble into Imperial space, barely crawling out of their own solar system with chemical rockets and delusions of grandeur. Humanity had been on the Empire's species to eventually absorb list for decades, filed somewhere between amusing curiosity and potential pets. Humans, she said, letting the word drip with the appropriate amount of condescension. Probably some kind of crude stealth technology. Their mathematics are still so primitive they haven't even unified quantum mechanics with their gravitational theories. But even as she spoke, something cold was forming in her stomach. The readings weren't just contradictory, they were getting worse. The ship appeared to be accelerating and decelerating simultaneously, existing in multiple locations within a probability cloud that made her tactical computers emit increasingly distressed beeping sounds. "Admiral." Kill's voice had climbed another octave. "The object is now reading as 17 different ship types, including at least 3 that don't exist in our databases and 1 that appears to be. A large fish? A fish. Approximately 12 kilometers long, with what our computers interpret as scales and gill structures. The classification keeps shifting to biological entity before reverting to unknown technological construct." Varidian closed her eyes and counted to 10 in High Galactic, then switched to profanity in Low Altarian when that didn't help. When she opened them again, the tactical display had somehow gotten worse. The approaching vessel, creature, entity, whatever, was now showing up as a probability cloud roughly the size of small moon, with ship signatures scattered throughout like glitter in a nebula. "Time to intercept." "That's complicated," Thex said, his usual composure cracking around the edges. "According to our sensors, it will arrive here in either 3 hours, -7 minutes, or sometime next Thursday. Possibly all 3. How does something arrive in negative time? I have absolutely no idea. The bridge fell silent except for the increasingly frantic beeping of various systems trying to process data that apparently violated several fundamental laws of physics. Varidian had built her career on understanding her enemies, their psychology, their technology, their limitations. But this was like trying to solve an equation where the numbers kept changing into colors. Red alert, she said finally. All ships to battle stations. And someone give me a direct line to Imperial Command. They're going to want to hear about this. As klaxons wailed throughout the fleet, Varidian stared at the impossible readings and tried to ignore the growing certainty that her 3 centuries of tactical experience might not be enough for whatever was coming. The humans, it seemed, had managed to build something that shouldn't exist, and was almost here. Probably. Maybe. According to the sensors, it had already arrived yesterday and wouldn't show up until next month. Varidian reached for her stimulant and discovered her hands were shaking. In 300 years of military service, that had never happened before. She was beginning to suspect it wouldn't be the last impossible thing she'd encounter today. The human ship arrived exactly when the sensor said it would, which is to say, at 3 different times simultaneously, while somehow also being fashionably late. Varidian watched through the view screen as reality seemed to hiccup, and suddenly there it was, a sleek vessel that looked like someone had asked a dolphin to design a starship after explaining physics very badly. Incoming transmission, Kill announced, sounding like they'd given up on sanity entirely. Audio and visual, standard Imperial frequencies. Also transmitting in 17 other formats we don't recognize, including what appears to be interpretive dance. On screen, the face that appeared was distinctly human. Brown skin, dark eyes that crinkled with barely contained amusement, and the kind of smile that suggested its owner knew exactly how much chaos they were causing. Captain's insignia decorated a uniform that managed to look both professional and like it had been designed by someone who thought regulations were more of a suggestion. "Greetings, Imperial Fleet," the human said, her voice carrying the particular brand of cheerful politeness that made Varidian's eye twitch. "I'm Captain Zura Okafor of a UEV Schrödinger's Revenge. Sorry about the sensor readings. We know they get a bit wonky around our probability drives. Hope we didn't interrupt anything important." Varidian found her voice after a moment of stunned silence. "Captain Okafor, you are in violation of Imperial space. Your vessel appears to be. What exactly is your vessel?" "Oh, that's the fun part." Okafor's grin widened. "We exist in quantum superposition until observed, which means we're simultaneously a warship, a research vessel, a diplomatic courier, and occasionally a very large sandwich. The sandwich thing only happens on Tuesdays, though." Fex leaned close to Varidian's ear. "Admiral, our weapon systems are reporting target locks on 17 different positions simultaneously. Our computers can't decide which one to shoot at." "That's because you're thinking about it wrong," came another voice from the human ship. A gangly man with wild hair stepped in a frame, wearing what appeared to be a lab coat covered in equations that hurt Varidian's eyes to look at. Dr. Nix Holloway, theoretical physicist and professional impossibility wrangler. "Your targeting systems are trying to collapse our wave function, but we've learned to surf the probability waves instead of fighting them." That's not how physics works," Varidian said weakly. "Isn't it?" Holloway tilted his head like a curious bird. "According to whose math? Your species spent so much time making physics predictable that you forgot it was supposed to be weird. We embraced the weirdness. Turns out, reality is way more flexible when you stop insisting it behave logically." Varidian felt something fundamental crack in her worldview. "You're telling me you build a starship that operates on? What wishful thinking. More like strategic uncertainty," Okafor said. "See, your technology assumes the universe follows rules. Ours assumes the universe is making it up as it goes along, just like everything else. We built ships that can exist in multiple states because we figured out that being definite is overrated. That's impossible. And yet here we are, having this conversation." Okafor spread her hands. "Admiral, with respect, your empire has spent millennia perfecting the art of being right. You got equations for everything, mathematical certainty, technological superiority, based on understanding exactly how things work. It's very impressive. Thank you, Varidian said automatically, then caught herself. Wait, that sounded like it had a but coming. But you forgot something important. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem isn't to solve it at all. Sometimes you dance with it, make friends with it, convince it to solve itself. Your computers are trying to target us like we're a normal ship, but we're not normal. We're magnificently, deliberately abnormal. Holloway nodded enthusiastically. We took everything your scientists said was impossible and made it into an engine. Uncertainty drives, probability manipulation, quantum consciousness integration. Our ship doesn't know what it is from moment to moment, so your targeting computers give up trying to figure it out. This is absurd, Varidian muttered, but even as she said it, she was beginning to understand. The humans hadn't built better technology, they'd built different technology. Technology that worked precisely because it didn't make sense. Admiral, Thex said quietly, our entire fleet is now showing stress fractures in their computational matrices. The computers are essentially having nervous breakdowns trying to process what they're seeing. Okafor's expression grew more serious. Look, we didn't come here to start trouble. We're explorers, not conquerors. We heard about your empire and thought we'd introduce ourselves properly. Turns out your sensor networks have some interesting interactions with probability fields. Sorry about the confusion. You're apologizing for breaking physics? We're apologizing for not calling ahead first. It's just good manners. Varidian stared at the impossible ship and its impossible crew, feeling centuries of military doctrine crumble around her. These humans had looked at the fundamental laws of the universe and decided they were more like guidelines. And somehow, impossibly, it was working. What do you want? She asked finally. To go home, mostly. We've got dinner plans. Okafor checked something off-screen. Though if you're interested in trade agreements or cultural exchange, we're always up for that. We've got some fascinating theories about consciousness-based manufacturing you might find interesting. And if we refuse? Okafor's smile turned gentle, almost pitying. Admiral, we're existing in 17 different probability states right now. In some of them, we're having a lovely, peaceful conversation. In others, we've already left. In a few, we brought cookies. The choice of which reality we collapse into is entirely up to you. Varidian looked around her bridge. At her confused officers, her overloaded computers, her proud Imperial fleet that had been reduced to electronic stuttering by a single human vessel that couldn't decide what it wanted to be when it grew up. Stand down, red alert, she said quietly. Open a diplomatic channel. As her crew moved to comply, Varidian found herself wondering what other impossible things humanity might have built while the Empire wasn't paying attention. And despite everything, the confusion, the shattered certainty, the way these humans had casually rewritten physics through sheer bloody-minded creativity, she discovered she was looking forward to finding out. After all, if you're going to have your worldview demolished, it might as well be done by someone who apologized for the inconvenience and offered to share their theories afterward.